Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scary Time. I'm Greg, host and curator of all the shows on the Indie Drop-In Network. Every week, I find a scary or paranormal episode that I think you will love from an independent podcast creator. If you like what I do here, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/indie drop-in. Today's episode is from Autumn's Oddities podcast. If it's creepy and weird, you'll find it on Autumn's Oddities. If you like today's episode from Autumn's Oddities, make sure to look in the show notes for links to subscribe. Enjoy the show.
Begin.
Hey, welcome back to Autumn's Oddities. I am potential Appalachian hill ghost, Autumn. I am kicking off my urban legend series today, and I decided to just break it up by region, cover all 50 United States. I'm looking into doing part of Canada as well. I am just really not familiar with their urban legends, so I'll have a good bit of research to do. I'm going to start with the southeast region of the United States, mainly because it's where I'm from, and it has some really good urban legends, including my favorite cryptid, Mothman. Also, this series will be extra special because other podcast hosts on my network, Darkcast, have given me their favorite urban legends from their home states to do some research on and get familiar with. And they definitely gave me some stories that I've never heard of before, but they are super creepy. So you are probably familiar with the regions of the country, but if you're not from the United States or just suck at geography, the southeast states of the United States include West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So we're known for SEC sports. You probably just heard me rattle off those states and you're like, yeah, those are football states. Hospitality and really, really good comfort food. So some major geographical features of the United States Southeast include the Appalachian Mountains, however you want to say it, the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mississippi River. So mainly we've got water and we've got a long ass mountain range. I'm just going to go through the states in alphabetical order, so let's get into it. Starting with Alabama. I think we know, if you are from the United States, that Alabama is primarily known for having a football dynasty, but they've also got Hell's Gate Bridge, and it's as ominous as it sounds. So vehicles and pedestrians cross bridges every day without incident. But there's one bridge in Oxford, Alabama, that's said to be the site of a tragedy that still has a pretty good hold over the town. Hell's Gate is rumored to be on one of the most haunted landmarks in the entire state. Sorry, I just bit my lip when I was talking. So the most widespread story of Hell's Gate Bridge starts in the 1950s with a young couple driving over the bridge. For reasons unknown, they drove their car off the bridge one night and both drowned. So the first legend is similar to a lot of others that happened on bridges, where you stop halfway across and you turn off the car's lights. One, if not both of the people in the car will appear to you. So the lovers that died on the bridge will appear in your car. If you don't see them, you'll still know that they were there because they will leave a wet spot on your car seats, not your child seats, but the seats in your car. So like they crawled from their watery graves and joined you, escaping from their hellish eternity just for a brief moment. That's really sad, though, if you think about it. And there would indeed be a wet spot in my seat if I saw two waterlogged ghosts in my car. The other legend associated with Hell's Gate Bridge in Oxford still is a little different than some of the other ones. The story goes that if you look behind you at about the halfway point across the bridge, the scenery will change and you will witness an actual portal to hell open up, engulfed in flames. That is some freaky shit. So did the young couple who the story originated from look back only to see a flaming portal to hell, and this caused them to crash their car and drive into the Chocolaco Creek? And yeah, that's the name, Chocolaco. I almost just said Chocoloco. creek all those years ago. So, although the legend involving the couple crashing their car into the creek in the 1950s is the most prominent one, there's actually no record of any crash or deaths in such a manner at that time or in that location. Hell's Gate Bridge was originally called the Boiling Springs Road Bridge and was built sometime in the early 1930s. The legends of the bridge didn't begin to circulate until 3 decades later with the story of the young couple driving into the creek. So, if there was an accident on the bridge, what caused it, and where did the story of the portal to hell originate? These questions have led paranormal teams, many of them, out to investigate the aptly named Hell's Bridge, but the only thing they discovered were there are no answers, just a lot more questions. So cars today can't cross the old bridge. It's too dilapidated to cross on foot, so warning signs and big cement barricades have been placed on either side of the bridge that prevent people from, doing a legend trip or investigating the claims of the people of Oxford. Whatever secrets the Hell's Gate Bridge possesses will remain a mystery, perhaps within the car that originally started the legend. How cool would it be, though, if they dredged that lake and found the fucking car? That's my vote. Let's dredge that lake. Anyway. Oh, wait, it's not a lake. It's a creek. Chocolaco Creek. Interesting name. Moving a little further north, we are headed to Fouke, Arkansas. The Boggy Creek Monster of Fouke is Arkansas's version of Sasquatch or Bigfoot. You may have heard of him. I think there are so many versions of Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I don't know. I can think of like 10 off the top of my head. Boggy Creek Monster is often described as being about 7 or 8 feet tall and covered in hair. I think that's the description that they all match. So in the area of Fouke, Arkansas, which is in Miller County, it's southeast of Texarkana, and we know about Texarkana, right, lives the Boggy Creek Monster. Legend says that he roams the wilderness and the creeks of rural Arkansas. He was first spotted in 1834 when people reported seeing a wild man in the woods. Long shot here. Maybe it was just a really tall guy with a beard that was like a little dirty. I don't know. In the sparsely populated area of the Ozarks, this Bigfoot-like creature walks upright, has a smelly animal-like odor, and is covered with hair. I've heard him described on several different shows and some other podcasts, and apparently he smells real bad. Like you can smell him coming a mile away. This hairy beast has a reputation for killing chickens, livestock, and dogs. Boo, we hate that, in the area, though he has never been known to harm humans, apparently. So he just targets, I don't know, easy prey is what it sounds like. In the late 1860s, the monster supposedly tormented 2 families living outside Fouke, and the legend quickly spread. In 1973, the tale of the Boggy Creek Monster was made into a real low-budget movie called, wait for it, The Legend of Boggy Creek. It's groundbreaking, I know. I watched a little bit of it, and it is hilarious. The narrator just keeps describing the bog and how stinchy it and the monster are. Again, not real groundbreaking stuff. But things ramped up, and in 1997, there were more than 40 sightings of the Boggy Creek creature, and in 1998, reports said that the hairy beast was seen walking along a dry creek bed about 5 miles south of town. Whether the monster is real or just a legend, the town of Fouke definitely capitalized on it, as they should, with signs throughout the town and a gift shop near Boggy Creek selling monster souvenirs. At some point, though, the locals grew tired of the tale and the looky-loos frequenting the area, and the gift shop closed. The Fouke monster was allegedly last seen near the junction of the Sulphur and Red Rivers, and I don't know where those are. On to the state that I went to law school in, met my husband, and had my daughter in, Florida. In the Polk County town of Lake Wales, there's a definite theme going on. The local elementary school's mascot is a ghost, and that begs the question, why? Don't get me wrong, I love a spooky theme, but that's a little weird for a school. Spooky Hill or Spook Hill is a free tourist attraction in Lake Wales, which is a rarity in Florida because, as you know, every attraction there costs a lot of money. Think theme parks. That shit is not cheap. So in a quiet neighborhood, a one-way road lined with moss-draped oak trees leads up to a very steep incline. An arched sign sits above a painted white line on the road, spelling out the name in dripping letters, Spook Hill. It's a cool ass sign. I'll try to link it, a picture of it on Instagram at least, maybe on Twitter. So this is wild, and I wish I'd known about it while I lived there. But there is apparently a very real phenomenon that happens at Spook Hill. Cars that are parked in neutral will appear to roll uphill. Yeah. So legends say the hill is either the site of a Native American burial ground or an epic battle of a Native American chief against a crocodile. Okay, sure, let's blame it on the ancient Native American burial ground or a crocodile, whatever. But the truth is, it's actually just an illusion created by the hill's surroundings. So while cars appear to be rolling uphill, they are still just rolling downhill. What the fuck? How does that even work? Again, it's all I could find is that it's an illusion, an optical illusion, and it's created by the surroundings on the hill. Very strange. So on to Georgia, Florida's neighbor. It has its very own lost city of Atlantis. At the bottom of Lake Lanier lies almost fully intact towns. Beneath the waters of the man-made lake are ferries, a car racetrack, and multiple cemeteries. In 1946, the U.S. government bought out the town, with congressional approval, of course, to make room for the lake. However, rather than demolish any structures, they just decided to let the water cover over the towns. So the lake was created by flooding valley communities that contained many cemeteries, of course, like I said, fueling rumors that it's cursed. Historians say some unmarked grave and other structures were swallowed up by its waters. And yep, that's how you get ghosts. We have all seen Poltergeist. That is how you piss off a ghost. So Lake Lanier has a very eerie feel to it, and there have been just an unusual amount of freak accidents and deaths on the lake. I've heard this lake covered on practically every podcast that I listen to, and I have been to it myself, but I did not get in. I do not fuck with lakes because you can't see what's underneath you. And when I read a little bit more about this, when I tell you a little bit more about this lake, you will understand why I don't like not being able to see what's underneath me. So in 2011, there were 17 deaths at Lake Lanier alone. That is a lot of deaths for a lake. I understand people get drunk, people get on boats, do dumb shit. That's still a lot of deaths. Many of the people who drowned have been recovered, but many people that go underwater actually feel arms and legs in the water, sometimes grabbing at them. Although they felt human body parts touch them, those people were not able to find the source, which led many of them to believe that spirits still roam the lake. And legend has it that the ghost of a long dead woman roams the lake in a flowing blue dress. These and other spooky tales have haunted Lake Lanier in the foothills of northern Georgia mountains for decades. But to many Georgians and just tourists alike, the large lake northeast of Atlanta is a recreational hotspot, and it's popular for boating and water sports. But the supernatural lore and urban legends about the lake have found a very receptive audience on social media. Like I said, I've heard it on pretty much every podcast I listen to. So more than 200 people have died in swimming and boating accidents on the lake since 1994. That'll add to the dark history. And the stories about mysterious underwater sightings are very, very creepy. But the true backstory of Lake Lanier, which, I said was built over an underwater ghost town, is just as interesting. So, like I said, before the land was buried underwater, it was lush and fertile and had thriving communities. Then came the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which wanted to create a lake to provide Atlanta and surrounding counties with power and water. Not saying that's a bad thing. It's, necessary evil. So the government offered locals money for their farmland. Most of it had been in families for generations, making it almost impossible to put a price tag on it. I mean, I don't know how you do that. It's like a family heirloom. But either way, they eventually did put a price tag on it, and some 700 families sold a total of 56,000 acres to the government, which then built a dam on the Chattahoochee River to form the lake. As their land filled with water in 1956, many of the locals gathered on roads and bridges to watch as their former homes and lives vanished before their eyes under the water. Whatever they had abandoned was covered by the rising lake. But the lake brought multiple benefits, including flood protection from the Chattahoochee, which flows west of Atlanta. And now I've got that fucking song in my head, way down yonder in the Chattahoochee. Okay, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to put that in your head. Just stop thinking about it. Either way, today, Lake Lanier has about 625 billion gallons of water, which is the equivalent of 950,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And again, along with that much water comes mysterious stories. So let's talk about what lies beneath the lake. I said they just let the water go over the towns, but to prepare the land to be filled with water, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers demolished or moved anything they considered to be dangerous. So they uprooted trees and hauled them away, and they tore down barns and wooden structures that could float and potentially endanger any watercraft that would be traveling over the water. They also removed any major infrastructure such as bridges and water intakes, and they relocated them. But again, there were cemeteries. And while the Corps of Engineers identified and moved marked graves, the Corps acknowledges that there were likely many unmarked graves that they didn't know about and did not move. So there's also an old race car track near Gainesville left intact under the lake. And although the Corps claims to have removed the bleachers, some boaters claim that they've seen them sticking up from the water when the levels are low. So the concrete block foundations of some buildings also were submerged, and some people have claimed to hear church bells from a sunken church. But the Corps of Engineers claims that is impossible because they would have removed any bells or large items that could float to the surface, like we said. So over the years, when the lake's water levels dropped during droughts, submerged roads, tire parts, and other artifacts have been exposed. To local historians, the changes wrought by the human-made lake are even scarier than the spooky folklore. That's a lot. Like, can you imagine just like being on a boat, looking over and seeing a road in the middle of the water? Like, how strange. And over the years, divers have reported creepy sightings beneath the murky waters. Some tell stories of a freaky, like gigantic catfish, supposedly as big as a Volkswagen, which is what I drive. It's not that big, but for a fish, it's pretty big. There are tons of YouTube videos showing sunken cars and debris at the bottom of the lake. In 2017, longtime diver Buck Buchanan told local media that he sometimes felt body parts in the lakes during his many diving excursions. He said, "You reach out into the dark and you feel an arm or a leg and it doesn't move." While we recognize that urban legends can develop over time, first and foremost is our concern for public safety. And this is Buck Buchanan speaking. So we certainly do not want to create an inviting atmosphere for the curious to come out to Lake Lanier for urban legend exploration or similar risky acts. I don't really know how that's any riskier than, boating drunk, but okay. One of Lake Lanier's most popular urban legends involves a car wreck. According to the story, a Ford sedan with two women inside careened off the bridge in April 1958 and fell into the lake. Some say the ghost of one of the women, dubbed the Lady of the Lake, wanders the bridge at night in a blue dress, lost and restless. Again, that sounds like something I want no part of, and I maintain my stance on staying out of lakes, especially this one. Now, to my home state, Kentucky. There's a park called Pope Lick that hosts outdoor movie nights and haunted houses hosted by a creature called the Goat Man just outside of Louisville. There's no clear consensus on how the Goat Man came to be. Some say he was a circus freak. Others say he was a farmer who tortured his goats for Satan and in return was transformed into a hideous goat monster. However, everyone does pretty much agree on his appearance. He has dark fur, pale skin, goat legs, and horns. The monster is said to hide under the bridge at Pope Lick Creek in Louisville and lure people onto the train tracks only to see them be hit by oncoming trains. And I don't love this legend for my own, personal train track death reasons, but it's probably the most popular one in my state. So in every urban legend, there's an origin rooted in truth, right? Well, this story begins with a man who called himself Colonel Beauregard Schildknecht. And there was no record of the good colonel having ever served in any branch of the military or a militia. In Kentucky, though, I will explain this to you. There's an honorary title that's sometimes bestowed upon people, and you get the title of colonel. And that is actually what Colonel Harlan Sanders is. The Kentucky Fried Chicken guy. It's a Kentucky colonel. It's an honorary title. Anyway, fun fact. But Colonel Schildknecht was the owner and the ringmaster of a traveling circus that performed across America and parts of the Deep South beginning in the early 1930s. Schildknecht did not have a great reputation and was known as a liar and a cheater. His crew of carnies and circus clowns were more of a gang of cutthroats and criminals rather than sideshow entertainers. But somehow, every town they visited, they left behind a series of unsolved thefts, disappearances, and grisly accidental deaths. I don't really think that that is an accident. So one stormy night, while stopped in a small town near Beltsville, Maryland, the circus's bearded lady, Madame Bristol's, found an abandoned baby left in a crate outside of her tent. The child was severely malformed, with stubs protruding from its forehead and little misshapen legs that ended in what looked like cloven hooves more than human feet. She took the baby in anyway, and she gave it food and shelter. Well, the old colonel saw an opportunity for exploitation in the infant. He found the starring attraction for his freak show, and that was going to make him rich. So he took the child and raised it in captivity, never letting it out of his cage until the colonel was satisfied that he could fully exploit him. Well, the child grew into a large, beastly man with huge horns. His temperament became violent, mainly because he was abused by the colonel and his carnies. So a whole nature versus nurture thing. We don't know if the goat man was born bad or made bad. Then one night, the circus train was passing through Fisherville, Kentucky, on its way to a performance in Louisville, when a bolt of lightning struck the tracks, causing the train to derail just ahead of the trestle over Pope Lick Creek. So the twisted wreck probably killed most of the colonel's crew instantly, but not all of them, since many body parts were found as far away as 2 miles away from the crash. Accident or karma for being horrible to the little goat baby? I don't know. But it's said that the goat man survived the train wreck, and it took revenge on the survivors by ripping them to bloody shreds. Meh, I can't say they didn't have that coming. But the colonel's body was never found, probably because the goat man ate him. I can only hope. Due to the number of deaths, missing persons, deer and livestock mutilations, and goat man sightings that have been reported over the years after that wreck, there is good reason to believe the goat man of Pope Lick never left the area. He is believed to have taken up residence in either an underground cave or a hut somewhere in the wooded area near that train trestle. Those that dare trespass into his domain have met their fate at his hands. The Courier-Journal, which is a Louisville newspaper, records at least 2 confirmed deaths in 1987 and 1988, and many injuries and close calls attributed to the Pope Lick monster and his protected trestle. The trestle rises about 90 feet above Pope Lick Creek and stretches 772 feet across to the other side. Although incapable of human speech, this is creepy, the goat man is said to be able to mimic human voices and has been known to call out names of those who have climbed on the top of the trestle in order to lure them out onto the tracks, just as an oncoming train is coming around the bend. Hell to the no. I do not follow, disembodied voices when they say my name. I go the opposite way. On weekend nights during the month of October, and especially during the full moon, the goat man is said to be most active in the woods and hills surrounding the Pope Lick trestle. Those who have attempted to drive beneath the trestle at midnight have reported being chased by the beast, who apparently can run at speeds of nearly 60 miles per hour. More than one driver has claimed that they've actually lost their car door handle or had bloody car prints left on their car after being chased through that tunnel. The legend of the Pope Lick monster and its haunted railroad trestle have been passed down through the oral tradition and spread for more than 3 generations through Louisville culture. But sadly, this urban legend has had some dangerous consequences with curious people. In 2016, an Ohio woman fell to her death from the bridge while looking for the goat man. Not really sure how that happened, but it definitely adds to the mystique of the legend. Now we are headed south to Louisiana, which is just a hell of a good time. New Orleans is one of my favorite places in the world, and not because of the drinking, but because of the food, the culture, plus the cemeteries. This legend takes place kind of around New Orleans, but not in it. And this cryptid lives in the Louisiana swampland. In the murky cypress tree-covered swamps, there's a howl in the distance, and it sounds like a wolf, but there's something a little off. And then you see it standing on 2 legs. It's a large, snarling beast. It throws its head back and howls at the moon. We've seen the wolf man, so while terrifying, you think you're dealing with a standard werewolf. But you would be wrong. This swamp monster is the Rougarou. Love the name. So traveling through Louisiana, you'll see plenty of remnants of bygone eras, whether it's old and most likely haunted buildings and houses, abandoned theme parks, or even museums with some very strange collections, like the Museum of Death, which I have not been to, bucket list. But in the swamplands and backwoods, there are plenty of non-cryptid creatures to watch out for, like alligators and gigantic snakes. But the Rougarou is by far the most terrifying creature to occupy the swamps. The history of the Rougarou is centuries old and has many different origin stories, as most cryptids do. But the earliest mention of the infamous Louisiana werewolf comes from medieval France. So beasts called loup-garou, and I'm guessing they're taking, the word, it's Loup. I'm guessing they're taking that from the Latin root word for werewolf, lupin, and that means werewolf in French, loup-garou, it's 2 words, were as infamous as witches throughout the century. So much so that in the 16th century, many crimes were blamed on the loup-garou. I don't think I'd ever blame terrible things on a werewolf, but different time, the 16th century. And similar to witch trials, the villagers were to actually capture people they believed to be a loup-garou and then hold a public trial. Usually they'd find someone in the woods or someone in the village who was just kind of acting weird. And again, just like alleged witches, they tried them. So the court would ask the public if they believed the accused to be a loup-garou, and usually the public would agree, mainly for fear that they would be, accused of being a witch or a loup-garou themselves if they dissented. So these loup-garou became a fear for many people in the country, leading them to earn their place in urban legends passed down to their children. The French Catholics claimed that you would be turned into a loup-garou if you did not follow the rules of Lent for 7 consecutive years. Good old Catholic guilt. There was even a story told to children that the loup-garou would come and take them if they didn't behave. So many of these legends, I don't understand them. I feel like you can make your kids behave in other ways. But when many of the French migrated to Canada and the southern United States, they took the legend of the loup-garou with them. So since that migration, many of the legends began to change to match the times and the dialect. Since Cajun dialect is a mix of French and English, and it's very well known for changing words just entirely to make them easier to pronounce, the name of the beast changed from loup-garou to rougarou, and it has 3 or 4 different spellings. But phonetically, the one that makes the most sense is Rougarou. He supposedly lives in the swamps of the greater New Orleans area and the Acadiana, and he might even be neighbors with the Honey Island swamp monster, which is known as Louisiana's Bigfoot of the swamp. So here we go, another local Bigfoot. Another telling of the story says that the Rougarou is under a 101-day curse unless the affected person can transfer that curse to another human being. Why 101 days? Really arbitrary number. But their curse usually comes from a local witch, sometimes a voodoo priestess. So the legend has it that you can protect yourself against the Rougarou by laying 13 small objects by your doors. Apparently, when a person changes into a Rougarou, they forget how to count past 12. So the Rougarou will see the 13 objects, try to count them, and be unable to count all of them. This will perplex it, and it will keep recounting the objects until the sun comes up, and it must return to its home. Why does the Rougarou feel it necessary to count the objects? I don't know. Maybe he's obsessive compulsive. But despite the fact that it was originally a legend, there are still claimed sightings of the Rougarou to this day, though it has died off a little bit in the past decade. The beast is also a hit in the pop culture lexicon in Louisiana. There's an annual Rougarou festival in the city of Huma every year. And the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans has a Rougarou exhibit, which includes a statue of the cryptid creature. This is fun. The New Orleans Pelicans had originally thought about changing their names from the Hornets to the Rougarous at one point. Again, that sounds fun. I think that would have been a good decision had they made it. On to Mississippi, which is the home state of Darkcast Network co-founder, Paige, and host of Reverie True Crime, is the Witch of the Yazoo gravesite. So in the middle of the sprawling historic Glenwood Cemetery, there is a grave surrounded by very heavy chain link known as the Witch's Grave. According to local legend and author Willie Morris's novel, Good Old Boy, the Witch, Good Old Boy is the name of the the book, the witch lived on the Yazoo River. She was kind of a hybrid of a siren and a witch, not really in appearance, but just in her actions, luring fishermen to their doom. So, according to the legend, the old woman lived on the Yazoo River and was caught by local law enforcement torturing fishermen. So, the sheriff is said to have chased her through the swamps, where she was half drowned in quicksand by the time the sheriff caught up with her. As she was sinking, she swore her revenge on Yazoo City and on the townspeople, shrieking, "In 20 years, I will return and burn this town to the ground." No one thought much of it at the time. They thought it was just the crazed ramblings of a desperate woman. So the witch may have made good on her curse, and on May 25th, 1904, a fire destroyed over 200 homes and nearly every business in Yazoo City. It was about 324 buildings in total. The fire was investigated, but no conclusive cause was found. The most popular theory is that the fire started in the parlor of a young woman who was getting ready for her wedding that day. While this is a possibility, it was the strange and fierce winds that were blowing on the day, which were apparently very unusual for the time of year, that led many to blame the witch. The flames were said to have jumped through the air by witnesses as if driven by some supernaturally forceful winds. But this is one of the creepiest parts of the story. Area weather reports from May 25th of 1904, there were no mention of high winds in the area anywhere. Nobody mentioned it. If these winds were so insane that, witnesses were saying they saw and were spurring on the fire, you would think there would be a mention in weather reports, but there weren't. So some of the townspeople went into Glenwood Cemetery on the day after the fire and found the large chains that were previously surrounding the witch's grave broken in half. That is some resurrection shit right there. So current local lore says that when all of the chains are gone from the witch's grave, she will return and take her revenge on Yazoo City. To this day, the cemetery caretakers are very careful to keep the chains repaired and in place. Though they are often broken, they apparently repair them again very quickly. They don't know what causes it, if somebody cuts them, if, they just get old and break. They don't know, but they keep breaking. Seems to me like the witch is coming back to burn the city. I have to say that it's very strange that the witch's curse mentioned burning the town and then the town burned. Coincidence or curse? I don't know. Very weird. On down the road to Missouri, to a road that I definitely do not want to end up on. Lawler Ford Road, located just outside St. Louis, Missouri, has the nickname Zombie Road due to the high number of scary stories attached to it. Supposedly built on an old Native American trail. Here we go again. Why are we always blaming Native Americans? Like, I've got Native American ancestry. I'm not out here haunting roads and shit just because, I'm pissed off. Either way, the 2.3-mile road saw much more traffic in the 1800s when it served as a route for Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. During the 20th century, the road was less traveled and as a result became something of a local haunt for teenagers. By the 1950s, it gained its zombie moniker based on the legend of a killer there named Zombie. Real original. I feel like we're about to get into another cautionary tale about premarital sex. So according to legend, Zombie was an old man who killed unsuspecting couples who braved the road late at night. So like many of the urban legends that I've told before, there's a killer stalking teenagers that were just trying to get it in. But he's not the only resident of Zombie Road. There's also a tale of a figure in white who stalks the area near where the railroad tracks ran through the road. Some believe that this figure is that of Della McCullough, who died after being struck by a train. In addition to these two terrifying residents, an old woman also appears yelling at anyone who passes by from abandoned houses in the area. Altogether, this sounds like a place I don't want to go. So when people investigate the homes, there's no one inside. Main takeaway, Zombie Road might be a route you try to avoid if you are driving through Missouri. Well, this next urban legend comes from Darkcast Network member Holly Begley, and it is the mysterious Brown Mountain Lights. So the lights have been appearing at Brown Mountain in Linville Gorge in North Carolina for hundreds of years. According to Cherokee legend, around 1200 AD, a great battle was fought between the Cherokee and the Catawba Indians at Brown Mountain, and the mysterious lights are from the Indian maidens still searching from their loved ones who died in battle. It's a really sad and beautiful story, but I kind of doubt that's what it is. Many people have tried to explain the origin of the lights over the years because, as humans, we like to explain things. And in 1771, a German scientist, he's like, I got it. He explained that the lights are inflamed nitrous vapors, but that was instantly disputed. Then in 1913, a U.S. Geological Survey concluded that they were in fact headlights from a locomotive. But when the tracks washed away 3 years later and people still saw the lights, that theory was also thrown out. That's flimsy. During the early 1900s, the mysterious lights were thought to be aliens, and Brown Mountain became a UFO tourist destination. The lights have been reported as being white, red, yellow, orange, and blue. They've been described as looking like everything from large balls of fire to small flickering candle lights that go from floating near the ground to rising up into the sky, sometimes at a very fast rate of speed. A symposium was held with the intention of finally solving the mystery of this strange phenomenon. So Burke County Tourism Director Ed Phillips, he brought in two notable experts, one Joshua Warren, a paranormal investigator, and Daniel Catton, a professor of physics and astronomy at Appalachian State University, both of whom had been studying the lights for years. So the two men spent the entire afternoon pretty much just bickering about paranormal, and science differences, exploring different theories. But in the end, nothing was solved and the lights remained a mystery. One local story recounts that in 1982, Morganton resident Tommy Hunter said he actually touched the lights at Highway 181 Overlook. He looked over the edge and saw a ball of light that was hovering, and he touched it. Tommy said it felt like he had stuck his finger into a light socket. And 6 other people actually saw Tommy that night and corroborated his story. They apparently watched this happen. So experts all agree on one thing: the lights are real. They just can't figure out where the source of the light is coming from. So this is a very real phenomenon. Again, nobody can explain it though. Physicists, paranormal experts, astronomers, all of them have studied it, for over 100 years. Nobody can figure this out. Who knows? Maybe we can road trip it and figure this thing out together. What do you say? On to South Carolina. The Presbyterian Church on Edisto Island is one of the most beautiful and possibly the most haunted in the country. The congregation actually dates back to 1685, making it one of the oldest in the country. While the church itself was built in 1831, people have been interred in the church graveyard since 1797, including a woman named Julia Leger. Julia died on the island in 1852 at the age of 22. And the Legers were a very wealthy South Carolinian family that had homes on both the mainland and on Edisto Island. So their daughter Julia got sick, was pronounced dead, and her body was placed inside their family mausoleum. But her story doesn't end there. According to legend, Julia had fallen ill with diphtheria and slipped into a coma and was later pronounced dead. Sadly, 2 years later, another death struck the family, and when the Legers opened the mausoleum to inter the body, they made a truly, truly shocking discovery. Collapsed in the corner was a pile of bones wearing the tattered material of Julia's burial gown. Julia Leger had been buried alive. So if you visit the tomb yourself, you'll notice that no door blocks visitors from entering the family crypt. This is because for years, the enormous stone door that sealed the tomb would be found open with scratch marks on the door, not on the outside though, from the inside. So each time the door was found open, church elders would close and secure the door, only to come upon the same eerie scene, moments later. Today, the door rests on the ground next to the tomb so that Julia is finally free to leave her grave. I believe this legend is actually true because her family substantiated that they found the scratch marks on the inside of the doors and her bones in the corner of the sealed mausoleum. And if I were her, I would make sure that door never went back on that tomb again. That is really a sad story. Moving on to another tragic tale, albeit not as sad, in Tennessee. A young Lothario named Tom found himself pursuing the wrong woman in the mid-1920s, and he paid the price for it. He took a woman out on a date to Lover's Lane in the backwoods of the Tennessee countryside, but unbeknownst to him, she was married. Her husband tracked them down and murdered the woman right in front of Tom. The scorned husband then dragged Tom from the vehicle and skinned him alive. Tom is said to still hang around Lover's Lanes, dripping with blood and carrying a knife to punish all who those who play games with adultery. He also just scares pretty much anybody that goes on, to the Lover's Lane and sits in the car. They have reported seeing a man that looks like he does not have skin. They can see like his tissue and muscles underneath and just dripping with blood. Again, something you want to stay away from. But again, this sounds to me like one of those no premarital sex cautionary tales. Well, the next urban legend from Virginia was actually suggested by both JT from Brew Crime Podcast and Edward October from October Pod. So the Bunny Man legend starts with what every good urban legend starts with, of course, an insane asylum. The residents of Clifton, Virginia didn't want an insane asylum in their town, so much so that they petitioned to have the patients transferred to another asylum away from their town. It was one of those not in my backyard kind of deals. They didn't like it. They threw a fit. Who gives a fuck that these people need treatment? Let's just get them out of here. So the townspeople got their wish, and the asylum's patients were being moved by bus when it crashed, freeing the prisoners on board. The police were able to catch all of the escaped patients except for one, the Bunny Man, Douglas Griffon. While searching for him, authorities found a trail of half-eaten, gutted bunnies, and many of them were actually hanging from what was then called Fairfax Station Bridge. For months, the police searched for Griffon, but he was never found. Then, on Halloween night, what other night, several teens were hanging out under the bridge, and at the stroke of midnight, they were attacked. The next morning, they were found hanging from the bridge, gutted like bunnies. To this day, it's said that if you are at Bunny Man Bridge at midnight on Halloween, you too will meet the fate of those teens and those poor little bunny rabbits. But for decades, story of the Bunny Man have been kept alive primarily by, the teenage population, along with social media. Social media has kept everything alive. It's revamped shit. It's given things comebacks that never needed comebacks. But I've heard this story covered on countless podcasts, so we are all kind of propagating this tale as well. The Bunny Man was said to be responsible for the deaths of 2 children in the Clifton area. Supposedly, they were trespassing on the hermit's land, and he murdered them and hung their bodies from the nearby bridge. I'm not sure if this was also at midnight or just another incident, but this is what I found reported. Others were rumored to have disappeared, and there was talk of animals being found horribly mutilated. The silliest iteration of the legend is that the escaped mental patient dressed in a bunny suit, hence the moniker Bunny Man. That's a lot less scary than the fact that, after the mental patient escapes, they find gutted bunnies hanging from bridges. You would think that's why he's called Bunny Man, but let's make it silly. Let's make him look like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. Put him in a bunny suit. Now on to my favorite cryptid, Mothman. In 1966, stories say that West Virginia was visited by an insectoid flying creature with bright red eyes who resembled both a moth and a man. He was spotted flying around the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, by many credible residents. But he wasn't alone. There were also sightings of shining lights and men in black. So Mothman's origins have been purported as supernatural, alien, or government experiments gone wrong. But Point Pleasant has come to love their cryptid, erecting a statue, creating a museum, and even dedicating a whole festival to him. The story of Mothman, again, began in 1966 when 2 gravediggers in Clendenin, West Virginia, saw a black figure fly over their heads while digging at the local cemetery. They didn't know it at the time, but they would be credited with having the first encounter with Mothman. According to the many eyewitness descriptions, Mothman is a black, 10-foot creature with wings and red eyes. He's been described as bird-like by many, so I'm not entirely sure how he got the name Mothman. But shortly after the cemetery incident, residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is only a few miles west of Clendenin, claimed they saw the creature while driving at night. A young couple claimed that the creature actually swooped their car several times. They saw it, kind of dive bomb them when they parked at a Lover's Lane. And then bright lights shone so intensely that they were temporarily blinded. Articles in newspapers at the time were reporting that the creature was also commonly seen in the TNT plant area of town, which led to speculation that perhaps, people were just seeing some sort of a large bird, maybe a crane, an owl. I've never seen a 10-foot crane or a 10-foot owl, but if you have, write to me, let me know. I would love to hear about it. Others believe that the creature was created in some sort of mutation accident involving the chemicals associated with storing TNT. Regardless, Legend has it that mysterious men in black suits began visiting the town shortly after the sightings were reported. But the most infamous sighting of the Mothman was on December 15th, 1967. Locals said they saw Mothman both on top of and flying over the Silver Bridge, which was a suspension bridge over the Ohio River. It connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio. I don't know if I said that right. According to Mothman lore, shortly after the creature was spotted on the bridge, it collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. An investigation into the disaster found that a fracture in a suspension chain was the actual cause of the bridge collapsing. So Mothman has been allegedly sighted at other disastrous events since the bridge collapse. People claim they've seen him before earthquakes, tsunamis, and even the 9/11 terrorist attack on the United States. This leaves locals and storytellers split on whether Mothman should be considered an evil or a benevolent creature. Some say the creature is bad luck or causing these disasters in some way, but others speculate Mothman may be able to see into the future and that he appears to try to heed a warning to the local residents of the impending doom. I think probably most people see him as more of a villain, but honestly, he could be both. And in many ways, he is both. And that's from Jason Burns, a West Virginia storyteller. Because there's no actual proof that he caused the collapse. He could have just been saying, hey, it's going to happen. Look out. I'm on the bridge, pointing out the break. Whether Mothman is a hero or a villain, Point Pleasant has embraced him. The town has a number of stores themed after Mothman, and many restaurants in town have a Mothman-themed menu. The biggest tourist event in town is the annual Mothman Festival. And this is a local employee at the Mothman Museum, Brittany Sayer. She says, when we have the festival, it can be upwards of 10,000 people visiting. You'll be on Main Street and it's packed. You cannot move on the street. Yeah, because people love Mothman. Mothman enthusiasts come from all over the world to pay homage to the king of the cryptids, in my opinion. Also my opinion. I think that Mothman is trying to warn people of impending danger. I don't think he causes it. I don't know. Maybe he's like tickled by, you know what I mean? Like maybe some super ancient god and he can see through dimensions and space and time. And he just kind of gets a chuckle out of coming to warn us and the fact that we piss ourselves because we see a giant moth and then we die anyway. But there's a great deal of research on him. I don't want to go any further, really. I would like to dedicate an entire episode to Mothman. So I will just leave it at that. So how do we feel? Did we have fun? I had a fun little journey, and I hope that if I covered your home state in this episode, you liked the urban legend that I pick. I found so many stories that I had never heard before. I definitely went down a rabbit hole. This was very hard to narrow down which legend to do for each state. My favorite urban legend from the Southeast region is Mothman, followed by the Goat Man and Lake Lanier, just because that's got to be one of the creepiest places on earth. Well, if you like what you hear, you can hear more on pretty much all podcast platforms, released on Mondays and Fridays. On social media, you can find me on Instagram at Autumn's Oddcast, on Facebook at Autumn's Oddities, and on Patreon at Autumn's Oddities. You'll get bonus episodes and early releases as a Patreon subscriber, and these are only for Patreon members. If you want to send me some urban legends from your home state, if I haven't gotten to your region of the country yet, or if you're from Canada or even another country, please send them in. I'd love to hear them to Autumn's Oddities podcast at gmail.com. Make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Rating is now available on Spotify. Any rating helps. It really, pushes us up in the algorithm, gives me a chance to be heard by more people. I think I do an okay job. I'd like to be heard by more people. Tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, and I hope you keep listening. And remember, if it's creepy and weird, you'll find it here.
Thanks again for listening to Scary Time by Indie Drop-In Network. Check out all of Indie Drop-In shows at indiedropin.com. If you would like your show featured, reach out to us at Indie Drop-In on all social media or go to indiedropin.com.